Right now, pause for just a moment and ask yourself this honest question. If a simple daily habit was quietly draining your energy, weakening your immunity, and keeping your body stuck in a cycle of fatigue and inflammation, would you want to know? Because what I'm about to share is not trendy advice, not fear-based hype, and not a miracle cure. It's grounded in neuroscience, physiology, and clinical observation. And it starts with a mistake millions of people are making with vitamin D, often with the best intentions. As a physician, I've spent years watching a familiar pattern repeat itself. People want health fast. They want more energy, less pain, better sleep, stronger immunity. So they reach for supplements, especially vitamin D, believing more must be better. But the human body does not reward excess. It rewards balance. And when we disrupt that balance, even with something as essential as vitamin D, the consequences can quietly accumulate. Vitamin D is not just a vitamin. It behaves like a hormone. It influences immune function, mood regulation, bone health, and even how our brain processes reward and stress. When levels are too low, the body struggles. But here's the part many people miss. When vitamin D is taken incorrectly, at the wrong dose, without context, or without awareness of individual needs, it can push the body into a state of imbalance. And imbalance is where illness thrives. I've seen patients who feel tired despite doing everything right. Patients who supplement faithfully, yet experience brain fog, muscle weakness, low mood, or frequent infections. They're confused, frustrated, and sometimes ashamed, thinking they've failed their health. The truth is, their biology is responding exactly as it was designed to respond, to overload. In modern life, we live in a culture of constant stimulation and excess. More information, more pleasure, more consumption. Our brains adapt by dampening sensitivity. The same principle applies to nutrients. When we flood the system without respecting the body's feedback loops, the body adapts by pulling back. What once helped can begin to hinder. Vitamin D works in relationship with other systems: calcium regulation, magnesium balance, kidney function, sunlight exposure, and individual genetics. Ignoring that context is the mistake. Taking high doses without guidance, assuming deficiency without testing, believing supplementation replaces natural rhythms like sunlight, movement, and rest. This is not optimization. This is disruption. But here is the hopeful truth, and this matters deeply. The body is incredibly resilient. When we restore balance, it responds with clarity, strength, and healing. When vitamin D is used wisely, intentionally, and in harmony with the rest of the body, it can support immune resilience, stabilize mood, and reinforce long-term health rather than undermine it. Health is not about chasing quick fixes. It's about learning when to add and when to pause, when to supplement and when to step back. It's about tolerating the discomfort of not overdoing, not overcorrecting, and not numbing uncertainty with more pills, more hacks, more shortcuts. True health requires restraint as much as action. So here's your call to action, and it's a powerful one. Stop guessing, stop assuming. Respect your biology. If you take vitamin D, do so intentionally. Get informed, understand your personal needs. Pair supplementation with sunlight, nutrition, movement, and sleep. And most importantly, listen to your body instead of silencing it with excess. This is not about fear. It's about agency. It's about stepping out of a culture that tells you more is always better and into a mindset that understands balance is where vitality lives. When you stop making this vitamin D mistake, you're not just correcting a nutrient issue, you're reclaiming your body's natural intelligence. And here is the climax, the truth that ties it all together. Health is not something you force. It's something you allow by removing what overwhelms and restoring what aligns. When you choose balance over excess, intention over impulse, and knowledge over assumption, your body does what it has always been designed to do: heal, regulate, and thrive. That choice starts today. When it comes to health, one of the most damaging myths of modern medicine is the belief that more automatically means better. More supplements, more stimulation, more interventions, more control. This mindset feels productive, even responsible, yet it fundamentally misunderstands how human biology works. The body is not a machine that improves with constant upgrades. It is a living system governed by balance, feedback, and restraint. When we ignore that reality, we don't optimize health, we destabilize it. In clinical practice, this pattern shows up again and again. People arrive exhausted, inflamed, mentally foggy, and emotionally flat, despite doing everything they believe is right. They are taking multiple supplements, tracking every metric, chasing energy and longevity with relentless intensity. What they don't realize is that their bodies are responding logically to overload. Biology does not reward excess. It adapts to it, and adaptation over time often looks like diminished function. At the center of this is the brain's reward system. The brain is designed to maintain equilibrium, constantly adjusting in response to inputs. When we push too hard in one direction, whether through substances, supplements, or stimulation, the brain compensates by pulling back. This is not a failure of willpower or discipline. It is a protective mechanism. The same principle that explains tolerance in addiction applies to health behaviors. When the system is flooded, sensitivity is reduced. What once helped now barely registers. This is why taking more of a good thing can quietly produce the opposite effect. Excess vitamin intake, constant biohacking, and aggressive health routines can lead to fatigue, low mood, and immune dysregulation. The body, overwhelmed by constant signals to perform, enters a state of quiet resistance. People interpret this as needing even more intervention, which deepens the cycle. It becomes a loop of overcorrection, not healing. True health does not come from dominating the body. It comes from cooperating with it. Balance is not passive or lazy. It is biologically intelligent. It requires patience, humility, and the willingness to tolerate discomfort without immediately trying to fix it. Many people struggle with this because modern culture trains us to eliminate discomfort instantly. We are taught that if something feels off, we should add something, another pill, another protocol, another solution. But often, the most therapeutic move is subtraction. Restoring balance means learning when to stop pushing. It means recognizing that the body needs space to recalibrate. Just as the brain recovers sensitivity when overstimulation is removed, the body regains strength when excess is reduced. This process can feel uncomfortable at first. Energy may dip, anxiety may surface. That doesn't mean harm is occurring. It often means regulation is returning. In medicine, the most powerful interventions are not always the most aggressive. They are the most precise. They respect timing, dose, and individual variation. They honor the body's capacity to heal when conditions are right. Balance is not a vague wellness concept. It is a measurable biological state that determines whether systems function in harmony or in conflict. When we let go of the belief that more is better, we create room for real health to emerge. We move out of constant striving and into sustainable vitality. And in that shift from excess to balance, the body does what it has always known how to do. It stabilizes, it restores, and it heals. Vitamin D is often spoken about as if it were a simple nutritional add-on, something interchangeable with any other supplement on a shelf. But this framing is deeply misleading. Vitamin D does not behave like an ordinary vitamin. It functions more like a hormone, sending signals throughout the body that influence immune defense, bone metabolism, muscle strength, mood regulation, and even how the brain processes stress and motivation. When we misunderstand its role, we are far more likely to misuse it, and misuse rarely announces itself loudly at first. In clinical settings, people often arrive convinced that vitamin D is harmless, that taking higher doses just in case can only help. This belief is understandable in a culture that encourages self-treatment and rewards certainty over nuance. But hormones are powerful messengers. They are designed to operate within narrow ranges, guided by feedback loops that keep the body in equilibrium. When we override those loops with excessive or poorly timed supplementation, we distort the message the body is trying to send. Vitamin D interacts with calcium regulation, kidney function, immune signaling, and neurotransmitter balance. It also depends on cofactors like magnesium and vitamin K, as well as on natural light exposure. Ignoring these relationships is not a minor oversight. It is a biological disruption. The body does not process vitamin D in isolation, and when it is forced into the system without context, the effects can ripple outward in unexpected ways. This is where the brain becomes especially relevant. The brain is exquisitely sensitive to hormonal shifts. When signaling becomes inconsistent or excessive, the nervous system may respond with fatigue, irritability, sleep disruption, or emotional blunting. People often misinterpret these symptoms as signs of deficiency or stress and respond by increasing supplementation. What they are actually experiencing may be dysregulation, a system struggling to recalibrate in the face of too much input. There is also a psychological component to this pattern. Taking a supplement can feel like taking control, like actively participating in one's health. That sense of agency is powerful, and sometimes it becomes reinforcing in itself. But control without understanding is not empowerment, it is guesswork. And the body, unlike a machine, does not respond well to guesswork over time. Using vitamin D responsibly requires shifting from a mindset of supplementation to one of stewardship. That means recognizing that this compound evolved to be synthesized in response to sunlight, movement, and circadian rhythm. Pills can support that process, but they cannot replace the biological context in which vitamin D is meant to function. When supplementation becomes a substitute for natural regulation rather than a complement to it, imbalance is almost inevitable. Precision matters, dosage matters, individual variation matters. The goal is not to push levels as high as possible, but to support the body's ability to regulate itself. When vitamin D is used with restraint and awareness, it can be a powerful ally. When it is treated casually, it can quietly undermine the very health people are trying to protect. True medical wisdom lies in respecting the complexity of the system. Vitamin D is not a shortcut to wellness. It is a signal, and signals are only helpful when they are clear, measured, and in harmony with the body's natural design. One of the most overlooked consequences of over-supplementation is not toxicity, but silence. The body speaks constantly through subtle signals: fatigue, motivation, sleep quality, mood, muscle tone, immune resilience. These signals guide regulation and adaptation. But when we overwhelm the system with constant inputs, those signals become muted. The body does not shout when it is confused, it often goes quiet. And that quiet is frequently mistaken for a problem that needs even more intervention. From a neuroscience perspective, this response makes perfect sense. The brain is built to adapt to repeated stimuli. When exposure is frequent and intense, the brain reduces its responsiveness in order to maintain stability. This phenomenon is well known in addiction medicine, but it applies just as powerfully to health behaviors. Whether the stimulus is a drug, a digital platform, or a supplement taken in excess, the brain compensates by turning down the volume, sensitivity decreases, baseline functioning shifts. In this state, people often report feeling flat, unmotivated, or mentally foggy. They may experience persistent fatigue despite adequate sleep, or a strange sense that nothing quite works the way it used to. These symptoms are unsettling, especially for individuals who are actively trying to improve their health. The instinctive response is to add more supplements, more protocols, more intensity. But this instinct, though understandable, often deepens the problem. When the body's signals are repeatedly overridden, the nervous system learns that its feedback is irrelevant. Regulation begins to rely on external control rather than internal cues. This is a subtle but important shift. Health becomes something imposed on the body instead of something that emerges from within it. Over time, this erodes interoception, the ability to sense and interpret internal states, which is essential for long-term resilience and self-regulation. The irony is that many people experiencing these symptoms believe they are deficient in energy, in focus, in motivation. But what they are often experiencing is not lack, but overload. The system is saturated. The brain, in an effort to protect equilibrium, has dampened responsiveness. Pleasure diminishes, drive weakens, recovery slows. None of this is a failure of the body. It is evidence of adaptation. Restoring sensitivity requires a counterintuitive approach. Instead of adding, we remove. Instead of pushing, we pause. This can be uncomfortable. When excess stimulation is withdrawn, symptoms may temporarily intensify. Fatigue may become more noticeable. Emotional discomfort may surface. But this phase is not regression. It is recalibration. The nervous system is learning to respond again. This process mirrors recovery in addiction medicine, where reducing exposure allows the brain to regain balance. With time and restraint, baseline function improves, energy becomes more stable, mood becomes more responsive, the body's signals grow clearer, health stops feeling like a constant struggle, and starts to feel like a dynamic conversation between the individual and their biology. The goal is not perfection or constant optimization, it is responsiveness. When the body's signals are respected rather than drowned out, regulation becomes possible again. And in that restored dialogue, the body reveals what it truly needs, often far less than we think, and far more precise than we've been taught to believe. In the pursuit of health, it is tempting to believe that a single intervention can compensate for a life that is biologically misaligned. A supplement can feel efficient, clean, and controllable. But the body does not function in isolated parts. It is governed by rhythms, light and dark, activity and rest, stress and recovery. Vitamin D, in particular, is deeply intertwined with these rhythms. It evolved as a response to sunlight, movement, and time spent outdoors, not as a standalone solution extracted from its natural context. Sunlight is more than a trigger for vitamin D synthesis. It is a master regulator of circadian timing. Morning light calibrates the brain's internal clock, influencing cortisol release, melatonin suppression, energy levels, and sleep quality later that night. When this rhythm is disrupted, immune function weakens, mood becomes more unstable, and metabolic processes lose efficiency. No supplement can fully replace this cascade of signals. When vitamin D is taken without respect for light exposure and daily rhythm, its effects are inevitably incomplete. Movement plays a similar role. Physical activity is not merely a way to burn calories or strengthen muscles. It is a biological signal that tells the body it is alive, capable, and adaptive. Movement improves insulin sensitivity, enhances circulation, and supports immune surveillance. It also influences how nutrients are absorbed and utilized. A sedentary body does not process vitamin D the same way an active one does. Without movement, supplementation becomes another input layered onto an already sluggish system. Rest, particularly sleep, is where integration happens. During sleep, the brain consolidates learning, clears metabolic waste, and recalibrates hormonal balance. Immune signaling is refined. Inflammation is regulated. When sleep is compromised, the body struggles to make effective use of any nutrient, including vitamin D. People often attempt to compensate for poor sleep with supplements, but this approach misunderstands hierarchy. Sleep is foundational. Without it, optimization efforts remain superficial. Nutrition provides the broader landscape in which vitamin D operates. Minerals such as magnesium and nutrients like vitamin K2 influence how vitamin D is activated and directed within the body. When the diet is deficient or imbalanced, supplementation becomes inefficient at best and disruptive at worst. The body cannot execute a complex biochemical process with missing pieces and expect a coherent outcome. This interconnectedness reveals a deeper truth about health. The body is not asking for isolated fixes, it is asking for alignment. When sunlight, movement, rest, and nourishment work together, vitamin D functions as intended: supportive, stabilizing, and restorative. When these elements are ignored, vitamin D becomes a symbol of our desire for shortcuts rather than a tool for genuine health. There is also a psychological shift required here. It is easier to swallow a pill than to change daily habits. But sustainable health has never been easy. It has always been intentional. Choosing to step outside in the morning, to move regularly to protect sleep, and to eat in a way that supports regulation sends powerful signals to the brain and body. These signals cannot be replicated in capsule form. When vitamin D is understood as part of a system, rather than a solution in itself, the body responds with coherence instead of confusion. Health becomes less about correction and more about cooperation. And in that cooperation, the body finds the stability it needs to function, adapt, and endure. One of the most difficult truths about sustainable health is that it often requires doing less, not more. This runs counter to a culture that celebrates constant improvement, relentless productivity, and immediate relief from discomfort. Yet the body does not heal through force. It heals through regulation, and regulation demands restraint, self-awareness, and the ability to tolerate temporary discomfort without rushing to eliminate it. In medicine, we often focus on what to add, what supplement, what protocol, what intervention. But some of the most meaningful improvements in health come from learning when to stop, when to pause supplementation, when to reduce stimulation, when to allow the nervous system to settle rather than constantly activating it. This is not passivity, it is precision. It is an active choice to respect the body's limits instead of overriding them. Restraint is especially important in a world saturated with quick solutions. We are constantly told that discomfort is a problem and that problems must be fixed immediately. But discomfort is often information. It signals adaptation, transition, or recalibration. When we eliminate it too quickly, we lose access to the data our body is providing. Over time, this erodes self-trust and increases dependence on external solutions. From a neurobiological perspective, restraint restores sensitivity. When the brain is no longer flooded with constant inputs, it regains its ability to respond appropriately. Motivation becomes more stable. Mood becomes more nuanced. Energy becomes more reliable. This is not dramatic or instantaneous, which is why it is often overlooked, but it is durable. Health that emerges from regulation lasts longer than health that is forced through excess. Self-awareness is the skill that makes restraint possible. It requires paying attention to how the body responds, not just to what is recommended or trending. It means noticing when something that once helped is no longer helpful. It means recognizing that optimal health is not static. It changes with age, stress, environment, and life circumstance. Without self-awareness, even the best advice becomes misapplied. There is also a moral dimension to this conversation. Many people blame themselves when health strategies fail. They assume they lacked discipline or consistency. In reality, they may have been too disciplined in the wrong direction. They followed instructions without questioning whether those instructions still served their biology. Reframing restraint as wisdom rather than weakness is essential. The most resilient patients are not those who do the most, but those who adapt intelligently. They know when to step back. They know when to simplify. They understand that health is a long-term relationship with the body, not a project to be completed. This mindset reduces anxiety, improves adherence, and supports genuine recovery. Ultimately, sustainable health is built on respect for limits, for timing, and for individuality. When we replace compulsive action with intentional choice, the body responds with clarity. Regulation replaces chaos. Trust replaces fear. And in that state, health is no longer something we chase. It becomes something we maintain, protect, and grow over time.